Okay, maybe one more video before I sleep. Okay, right. So let me just tidy up the show page. Okay, so I have a bunch of stuff happening here. Let's just wrap this around the container fluid. And then this one is a row. Just a single column. Alright. So it's nice, evenly spaced out. Okay, so before we can approve the accounting entry, we need to attach a bunch of journal entries here. At the same time, while it's pending, we also want to edit the probably the particular. Okay, we forgot the particular, so maybe you can put it somewhere here. Okay, not really taking the design or the UI into consideration yet. Let's put something like H6 particular. Okay, so we have a particular right there. And then in the lower part, let's say that we have our journal entries. Okay, so let's sort of create another row. We're inside already a single column. And let's say that I'll move this maybe somewhere here and eliminate these HRs. Okay, so with the particular there, so if this one is already approved, then these buttons should disappear. Okay, so I think that's okay for now. Okay, next thing we'll do is if the okay, where are we at? Okay, so let's have another section here, and we can say if accounting entry is pending, let's display the controls of the controls for adding a journal entry. So we'll say something like maybe journal entries action, or actions journal entries, or actions new journal entry rather. Okay, as a partial within our accounting entries view. Okay, so if we go to our view, actions new journal entry.html.erb. All right. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, let's put a row here. It's basically a 3-column thing for the interface for adding a journal entry. So we'd like to have some sort of select here, the amount. Oh, sorry, it's a 4-column thing, right? The drop down for the accounting code, the amount, or probably the post type in the second column, the amount, and the actions part. Okay, so for example, we can have a select tag. This would correspond to the accounting code options from collection for select will be all the accounting codes. Okay, so it means that we need to load all accounting codes in our controller for our show. Let's just do all for now. And we like to have the ID as the value and then the name. Let's just make sure that we're following the proper fields. All right, the name and the ID. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. All right, so we have accounts payable, food, or cash. Let's put an HR here, just so we have a nice border. Or better yet, let's wrap this in a card. Bootstrap card. Class equals card. Class equals card body. Have everything there. Okay. Let's give this a class. Form control. Okay, and then let's put a label. Say accounting code. So something like that. Let's make sure to wrap this around a form group, if I'm not mistaken, to fix the proper padding according to the Bootstrap Bootstrap 4 CSS framework. Alright, so accounting code right there. This one would be the post type. Also select. Instead of a collection, we'll just say options for select. And let's put in the post types from journal entry. Okay, so we say something like journal entry post types. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, so we have either a debit or a credit for our post type. And okay, before I forget, let's make sure that we have IDs for these elements. So here we can say select accounting code, and then for this one, this will be select for post type. Okay. This one will be amount. Of course, it's not select. Numeric field tag or number field tag. Built-in Rails helper. Default is 0. Let's give it a class, form control, and an ID input amount. Okay, so we have amount right there. And then we have a button for our actions. This will be our button. Give it a class. Say button block. So it takes up the entire width of the column. Say add. Alright. Okay, so let's program the UI first. UI first. Okay, so we know that the show page is governed by the show.js file. So let's go ahead and edit that and include the necessary UI. Let's just bring that up so we have some reference. Okay, so for accounting code, we have the select accounting code. We have our select post type, our input amount, and finally our buttons. Button add. Can't remember if I put in an ID. Okay, no ID yet. So we say, or let's just be more verbose about this and say the ID for this is button add journal entry. Add journal entry. Okay. Of course, you have a URL for that. Add journal entry. Okay, make sure you cache the DOM. Let's just tidy this up. Select post type. What else? The amount, input amount. And the button, I think. Oh, okay, we have the button right here already. Okay, in our bind events, you can say something like button add journal entry on click, do something, and let's say by default that something would be to disable. Well, we need to get the values first. Let's say accounting code ID. We need the accounting code ID. We need the post type. We need the amount, and that's it. To create a new journal entry, these are the variables that we need. So we get this from our select accounting code dot val post type from our select post type dot val, and our input will be input amount dot val. Okay, so we get the values first before we disable the UI. So we say select accounting code dot prop disabled is equal to true. This one will be for post type input amount dot prop disabled is equal to true. What else? In the button. Okay, so button add journal entry dot prop disabled is true. Okay, we build up our data first that will eventually pass to the server. Okay, so we pass in our accounting code ID. It's kind of weird because I use the Ruby syntax for the convention for the variable naming, but the values are camel cased on the JavaScript layer. Post type is post type, and finally amount is amount. Okay, we disable the UI, and then just copy this. And modify it a bit. Okay, after they add a successful journal entry, after they successfully add the journal entry, then we can redirect to show page given by the ID of the accounting entry. Else, if you have an error, then same thing, produces a bunch of errors, but let's just make sure that we enable the UI in the case of an error. So we say true will become false. Okay. Let's try it out. Refresh this. Right. Okay, so it's working in terms of UI, but of course we produce an error because we still don't have the routes for add journal entry. Okay. The same approach as the previous one. This time I'll start with routes. Add journal entry to accounting entries, add journal entry. So we have that. Register it to our controller, get the accounting entry, and get the variables that we passed. Accounting code, accounting code ID dot first. You have the post type. It's just a string, so we say post type, and finally the amount. So we say params amount. Let's make sure that we round it off to 2 decimal places, but we're not sure if the amount is included, so we say try round 2. Right. So our argument for our command patterns in the context of this method will be our accounting entry, our accounting code, the post type, and of course the amount. Okay, so it's the same template as what we've been seeing so far. Okay, we have a validator here, so we say validate, add journal entry, pass the necessary arguments if there are errors, then report it back to the client. If there are none, then we should have an operation called add journal entry, which passes in the necessary values from our args argument initially. Alright, so we need to program 2 command patterns: validate add journal entry and add journal entry. Okay, let's just copy from approve and add in the other variables that come with this. So that's accounting code, args accounting code. Let's see, we also have our amount, and we have our post type. Of course, this is just validation, so do a bunch of validation here. Let's check for the accounting code. Sorry, it should be blank. Accounting code required. Okay, same goes for post type. Same goes for amount. Okay, but if the amount is present and the amount, okay, say that the amount should be present. say errors, amount required, or sorry, if amount is present, what does that imply? That we do have an amount. Okay, actually we don't need this for now. Okay, so for our UI to know if there's an error that actually occurred, let's put a message together with the actions for the add journal entry. So just put it here at the top for now. Or rather, errors. Oh no. Div class. I forgot that it's already handled by the JavaScript. Okay, let's just have a single div there for message. Check our routes first. Okay, add journal entry. Validate. Come on. Okay. So I guess this will do. Okay, let's force an error for validate journal entry and see what the effect is. Not yet implemented. Okay, I remember now for amount. If amount is present, as well as amount is greater than 0, or rather less than or equal to 0, then we say that not enough funds, or invalid amount. Let's try this again. Okay, if an error, validate journal entry. Okay, yes, I meant this. Might have a wrong spelling somewhere. Oh, it's validate journal entry. Okay, so it's just validate journal entry. The file name is just validate journal entry. This should be validate add journal entry. Sure, this is capital E. Validate add. Oh, sorry, it's already included there. I guess I'm really sleepy. Okay. Now to actually have the add journal entry. All this will do is to create a journal entry. Okay, so we pass the accounting code. Right. Okay, so created a new journal entry, and let's try to save it. And I think that's it. Time to test. Okay, so it worked, but the UI gets, or rather the UI disappears. So maybe there's something wrong with, where did they put message? Let's put it somewhere here. Let's have it as another row. Okay, I might be missing something. Let's see, why isn't it working? It's actually replacing the entire thing. Looks like some invalid CSS somewhere. Most likely here, I think. Oh, okay, so included it already. Alright, there we go. Alright. So that's working. But if you put 100 here, should have at least 2 entries. I don't think we need that. Should. Okay, so for add journal entry, don't need to count this one. So we're now left with the error there. Okay, so we have a client, or the front end part, interacting with the back end, littered with command patterns. Let's just remove this first, and try to say that we wanna entry cache. Okay, so ideally it's saved, and then reloaded the show page. So let's see if it indeed displayed the necessary information, or the necessary journal entries. Okay, so we can say here, if accounting entry dot journal entries dot size is greater than 0, then that's the only time we render the table. Passing the locals. Okay, we don't have yet the file for journal entries, so let's create one. And all this will do is to create the table for our journal entry. So in this case, we have a table here. The head, the body. Oh, sorry. headers, we have, okay, so there are three main headers. You have the accounting code, you have the well, the post type is given by the debit or credit side, so you have two more, which is the debit and the credit. Debit, let's fix this, text right, credit, whoops, journal entries, missing partial. Right. That's weird. Let's refresh this. Missing partial, accounting entries, journal entries. We already have it here. Accounting entries, journal entries. Let's finish this first. Journal entries dot each do O. Okay, I see the reason now. These actions should actually be, no, they're ERB, that's correct. What's happening here? Oh, I'm using Hamel. They should be ERB. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have accounting code here. Journal entries, we're looping. Okay, so here we have O dot particular. Oh no, we're actually creating the journal entries. Okay. O dot accounting code. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we have O1 cash here. Now for the debit part, we'd like to know if this journal entry is a debit or a credit. So we can do that in our model and say is debit, then the post type should be equal to dr. CR. Alright. So we'll only display the amount if O dot is debit on this side, number to currency, and we pass in the amount. No currency symbol for now. If this is debit, then this is credit, but both of which should have a text line right. Whoops. Oh, is credit. Okay, there we go. If you try to add credit, or let's say for food. Alright, so now we have debit, we now have credit. Okay, you can add as much as we want. Let's say for this one, 500 and so on and so forth. Okay, so we need new validations for our approve. We cannot approve this record if the debit side and the credit side are not equal. Okay, so to do that, we can just modify our operation for approve, or rather for validate approve. And just to not have things messy, we can have a separate method for this. Say check balances or check and balance. Okay, and what check and balance will do, this one will only be called if our accounting entry is present. Oh, let me just check and balance. All right. Okay, so if the accounting entry is present, to check and balance first, and then journal entries extracted. If size is less than 2, actually there's this redundant, so we can say at journal entries equals accounting entry dot journal entries. You can then remove this and just make this an act. Okay, so for the balancing part, sorry, there, we check this first, else we do a check and balance. Okay, so we want to make sure that the debit amount is equal to the credit amount of this accounting entry. Let's just use a simple loop for now. Okay, so if o.postType is equal to dr, or rather if this one is debit, then we add to our debit amount, else if o is credit amount, okay, let's just review if the logics are correct. Okay, and if debit amount is not equal to credit amount, then we say unbalanced journal entries. Debit is, just display this for debugging purposes, credit amount. Right, so the idea here is we cannot approve this if, let's say, we have accounts payable debit. Okay, so we want also another fix probably will be that the all debit in one side and all credits in the other side. So for that, right, what we can probably do is we can have a scope here for journal entries, and we'll get all debits first. All right, or can just say instead select where o.postType is equal to debit. Okay, so we do debits first. Okay, no need for this, or rather just this, and no need for this. Okay, Okay, so what happens here? If it's debit, it will only print on the left or on the middle column. If it's credit, then it will only print to the right. Let's transfer this. Okay, so print debit first before credit. Refresh this, and we have this order. Okay, so I think that's right about that one. Okay, we have an error when we try to approve. Where could that be? Let's see. Check and balance. Okay, so validate approve. I don't have a method called check and balance with an exclamation, so I have to put an exclamation here so it becomes consistent. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, still error. Debit amount. Okay, let's see. Okay, we shouldn't call it from O. It is simply a local variable. Okay, then we have unbalanced journal entries. Okay, so stop there, and basically what we have is an interface to start adding journal entries to our accounting entry, and then we can only approve it if the debit and credit are balanced, and the amount of debit and credit are balanced, and we can still delete this if it's pending. Right, so try to balance this out. So say for instance we have 20 right here for credit. Okay, so now they're equal 120. So if we try to approve this, we have an error. Date approved. Okay, so we don't have date approved, but we have date posted. Let's try it again. Okay, so since this is approved, then the actions are gone, and we now have an approved accounting entry together with its corresponding journal entries. Going back to our accounting entries, you can see that the status is now approved. Right, so I'm a bit sleepy now. Actually, I'm really sleepy now. So I guess that's it for this video. Maybe for the next one, I'll clean up the UI just so it looks much more presentable, and add a bunch of other really small features for this accounting entry. Okay, so I guess that's it for this video.